308, the king of cartridges, says me. That's what we're going to talk about, the 308, why it's kind of the king, the standard of cartridges, the winner of the last poll that I put on Patreon, and some questions I asked specifically for Q&A stuff, ideas, just about the 308, because why not, right? It's been a while since I've done a 308 episode. So why don't we discuss this iconic, classic, what I would say, king of cartridges? All right, with that, welcome to the podcast where we tackle this topic, God willing, many more, the right way with Almighty God at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. On that, military, law enforcement, private security contracting, competition shooting, state rifle and pistol champion a few times over. Been hunting since I was a boy, been a professional hunter and guide, firearms instructor, some other stuff, bio bullet points in the show notes, right? That's why I call it Gunfighter Life. I've been blessed to be a professional gunfighter or gun-related stuff most of my adult life. So that's why I do the podcast. There are a lot of gun podcasts out there. Some have experience, some do not. I try and do this podcast to serve you guys, to bring the real-world first-hand experience to you guys. With that said, if you want to support, like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. If you want more or want to support, check out Patreon. All right, enough of that. With that, let's talk about the king, the Elvis of rifle cartridges. Anyway, have you ever been to Graceland? I'll just say that Elvis and I have very different tastes when it comes to cars and interior decorating and that kind of stuff. Pink Cadillac's not really my style, but he was also a gun guy, had a shooting range. There's a shooting range there at Graceland, so hats off to him for that. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Elvis. We're here to talk about the 308. The 308, why do I consider it like the king of cartridges? I would say it's the most versatile rifle cartridge, period. That's a big statement, a bold statement. Let me back it up. It is the best all-around rifle cartridge, period. Why? Not because it's the best ballistically. It's not. There's a lot of other cartridges that do pretty much anything you say, what's the best cartridge for this ballistically? It's almost certainly not the 308. It's not the most powerful. It's not, whatever quantifier you want to put on there. But the real place where, if you want to call it the superpower of 308, is it's so common. Its commonality is really the only big thing about it. The reason, you might say, it's a short action cartridge as opposed to some other ones. The reason we have a short action is because of the 308. Right? Before that, pretty much everything was a standard 30-06 length. Because the 308 became so common, we have a standard short action based on the 308. But again, that's because it's so common. Right? Again, if you, what's the best for X ballistically? Probably not the 308, but the 308 is so common. They're a lot better for whatever game you're going for, probably better ballistically, rounds than 308 if you're talking about hunting. But it doesn't cross over into the battle space, right? If we're talking about a battle rifle, a fighting rifle, obviously intermediate cartridges, the king of that is the 223. But, you can get a lot of rifles both in hunting, for medium game, which when you talk about hunting in the U.S., most people think about deer. And I know you can, and I've guided, and I know that you can take deer with a 223. It's completely marginal. It's not a good one. 308's a good deer caliber. 308's also a very good fighting rifle caliber. SCAR 17, AR 10s, right? If you want to go back to the ancient of days. One of my first rifles I did any kind of competition with was M14s. Yeah, it's a good fighting rifle caliber as well. So it's the best. It's the most versatile all-around caliber because of its commonality. You can get it in an M14, or you can get it in a BM59. You can get it in a Scar 17, you can get it in an AR-10. You can get it in a lot of good bolt guns, both for tactical use. Obviously military has used that for that purpose for a long time. Not, again, because it's the best, because it's what they had on hand. It's a NATO standard caliber. And I know there's a slight difference between 7.62 by 51 NATO and 308, but it's minutia, right? Practically, don't put the wrong ammo in your gun and blow your face up. That's your fault, not my fault. If you hurt yourself or somebody else, it's your fault. Be a man, not my fault. But as far as practically goes, they're the same. But 308 is the most versatile for that. Get it in a fighting rifle, get it in a battle rifle. You can get it in a very high-end hunting rifle. You can get it in a budget hunting rifle. You can get it in a very cheap, affordable rifle. You can get it in an old military surplus Enfield Ishapur, giant fighting bolt-action rifle. It's so versatile. It's been a NATO standard cartridge. I don't know when NATO adopted it, but it came out in the 1950s. You can get it in machine guns, although we're probably not talking about that today. As cool as, running a, Mark 48 is, or running a 240 Golf is. Like, we're probably not talking about that for today for most of you guys. But it's a good versatile cartridge. It's good all around. It's the Breyer's vanilla of ice cream, right? It's good with a lot of stuff. It's the Honda Civic of vehicles. You might think, well, I drive an F-250. A lot of people drive F-250s, but the majority of the time for what they're doing, going back and forth from work, going to Walmart or Target if you're bougie, a Honda Civic will probably do fine. If you're like a general contractor working on houses, or you're, a handyman, you probably need a truck. I kind of need a truck for where I live and what I do, but most people, let's be honest, even if they drive a truck or a Jeep, most of the time we're on blacktop, they could get by with a Honda Civic. It does most things well. It's, I guess since it's American and American made, I should say like the Ford Focus or whatever. I don't even know if Ford still makes Focus. Whatever the Ford Taurus, if you're an older generation, right? Like, it's a general all-purpose vehicle for most people most of the time. That's where the 308 shines. If we talk about the standard loading, and there's a lot of different loadings for 308, it's 30 caliber. You can get lightweight bullets, you can get heavy for caliber bullets, but the general, and this is going to depend on many factors, but let's go with rough numbers. Don't ballistically nerd out on me. 150 grain at 2800. I know there's a lot of factors there, but that's the general 150 grain at 2800 feet per second, and that can do most things. You could argue you don't need that much for deer, and I would argue the same. I'd say 6.5 Creedmoor is kind of the new 308, but nothing wrong with the 308. 308 is good for deer, it's good for elk. Now, again, is it the best? No. Could you make an argument that there are better calibers for elk? Yeah, and I have arguably better calibers for elk. Guess what I took my elk with last year? 308, 150 grain, right? Cup and core bullet, and I have elk in the freezer, so it's good enough for elk. It's also good in a fighting rifle. Again, very general purpose. So it is, I would argue, the most versatile. Not if you just talk about hunting, like what's the most versatile hunting cartridge? I would say the 30-06 beats it because it does better with heavier bullets. But again, most people most of the time don't need that. And 30-06, unless you still consider an M1 Garand or Garand, right? Unless you still consider that a fighting rifle, which really hasn't been a thing since Korea, then that's off the table. For an all-around rifle, tactical and hunting, and all-around just shooting and enjoyment, and you can get the ammo at Walmart, the 308 wins. It's the king of cartridges, says me. Full-powered rifle cartridges. If you're comparing it to, a 223, that's an intermediate cartridge. It's not a full-powered rifle cartridge. It's an intermediate. And it's a good varmint round, good coyote round on the high end, and obviously it works for defensive use. But it's not a good big game hunting round. It will work. But heck, I've taken big game with a 38 special. It's not a good round for it. It works, right? So it's good. The 308 is good for many, many things. Super versatile. Okay, king of cartridges, says me. Argue in the comments if you want. Let's get into the poll, right? I said we had a poll on Patreon. I have a lot of polls on Patreon. I'm not perfect, but I try and remember to make the polls open to the public. So you don't have to sign up. You don't have to put in a credit card, any of that stuff. You can just go and you can vote on the polls. A lot of the polls are, what content do you want? Like, I'll put in a bunch of topics and you vote for what you want to hear. This one was a poll on a little bit different. You've probably heard of like the one rifle guy, beware the man with one gun. This is a little bit different. My question posed was thus. The one rifle man is often talked about. What about one centerfire cartridge for hunting, assuming no lame straight wall or other restrictions, right? Those laws are ridiculous. Assuming you can still have and hunt with a handgun, rimfire, shotgun, and fighting guns, but this would be your one. This would be if you could only pick one of your centerfire hunting cartridges, like one centerfire hunting cartridge. Assuming you could still have handguns, rifles, shotguns, right? That's me. And then what would you choose? And I was surprised at this with all the options. I actually picked 30-06 because then I can have fighting rifles in 308 or I can have fighting rifles in 223. But for a hunting cartridge, I think the 30-06 is more versatile. I picked the 06, but not you guys. We had one vote for the 300 Win Mag. Others, we had one for the 30-30. I actually meant to put that in there, but I forgot. So you got the 30-30. We had one for 300 Wisdom, which ballistically pretty much a 300 Win Mag. But the vast majority was the 308, which surprised me. I guess it shouldn't, but I was surprised. I would have thought, 30-06 and 270 would have been at least neck and neck, but they weren't even close. 308 won. So, and to be fair, most people live east of the Mississippi. East of the Mississippi, 308 is more than you need. So that's, again, why I thought with all those votes for the 308, we should bring up the 308 and some questions you guys have on the 308. With that said, let's get to your questions on the King of Cartridges. Got a lot of comments on this today. So, how do 308 tactical loads differ from hunting loads? Brace yourself. Marketing. Marketing is how they differ. Right? They're a good, hunting bullet will be a good tactical bullet. Period. A good tactical bullet will be a good hunting bullet. Not this year, not the year before. I think the year before that, I was hunting with my scout rifle, and I had two loads that shot pretty close to point of aim, point of impact. I had a bunch of leftover from when I was the commander of a tactical team, Stop Active Shooters. I had a bunch of this ammo I bought myself. I didn't take the company's ammo, right? It was just stuff that I had to practice with. And it was 160 something. I forget if it was 165 or 168 grain bonded tactical federal ammunition, marketed as tactical. It's a bonded controlled expansion 308 bullet. It did fantastic on a deer. Did I need it? No, I could have used a simple cup and core, but I had a bunch of them. They were accurate. They shot point of aim, point of impact. I took my deer with it, with the scout rifle. The difference is marketing. Now, you may want specific bullets, right? And that's what's important, right? If you want a good controlled expansion bullet, like that bullet would have been a great choice for elk. But that's not what my rifle was zeroed for at the time, so it's not what I took my elk with. What's most important is hitting and getting the bullet where you're aiming it. That's way more important. But if you're hunting elk with a 308, yeah, a good controlled expansion bullet, whether it's marketed for tactical or hunting, is a good choice. If you're, doing something else, if you're hunting whitetail, you probably don't need a bonded bullet. It won't hurt, but it doesn't really matter what it's marketed for, right? So, way more important is that you can put the bullet where you're aiming. So the big difference there is just marketing, right? It's not like the tactical stuff is it's the same technology. If it's a tactical bonded, kind of bullet, great. If it's marketed as tactical and it's just a full metal jacket, it's going to suck for pretty much anything useful. So just be aware of that. The bullet construction is what matters. The only real difference is how they market it. So just be aware of that. And that's what I told him when I replied. I said marketing. That's the difference. One of the guys just commented the most, and he didn't use proper diction or English, but basically I'm going to paraphrase what he said. The cartridge that happens to be affordable. Many loads available, many rifles are chambered in it. Yeah, like I said, that's pretty much its superpower. It's widely available. There's a bunch of different rifles, from some of the best tactical rifles in the world to the best hunting rifles in the world. Right? You can get a Winchester Model 70 featherweight in 308. You can get a Scar 17 in 308. Right? And you can't say that about many other cartridges. So Good use for FMJ ammo. This is another question. Good use for FMJ ammo other than plinking. No, that's it, man. Plinking and affordability. If you're running a machine gun where you're going to dump, 50 rounds in the side of a light armored vehicle, yeah, FMJ is okay for that. But for the average person, it's good because it's cheap. If you want to practice with cheap ammo, that's FMJ. Don't use it for defense. Don't use it for home defense. Don't use it for hunting. Don't use it for anything other than plinking and having fun at the range. That's what it's for. That's really the only thing it's for. It's because it's affordable. You didn't sign the Hague Convention of 1890, whatever, so stop using FMJ unless it's just for affordable, fun practice. Or if it's like an actual survival situation, it's all you have. Like post right of bang, right of apocalypse, right of the peanut butter hitting the balloon, whatever acronym things you want to use there. Let's see. For a shorter barrel, 308, 16-inch for hunting deer-sized game, you're going to lose about 200 feet per second, says this guy. That's wild. That's a wild guess, right? You could lose way less, or way more than that, depending on the load, depending on your barrel, depending on the air temperature, depending on all kinds of factors, right? So you could lose about 200 feet per second on velocity. Should I go with a lighter bullet out of the shorter barrel for 250 yard, or he says meter, he must be Canadian or something, 250 meter max, we don't use those commie measurements here, 200 meter max distance, or doesn't matter as long as I have a proper bullet construction and good shot placement? And what I told him was, basically, man, you're worrying about minutia. If it's 250 yards and in, neither you nor the animal you're shooting, deer, elk, whatever, is going to notice the 200 feet per second difference. You start pushing it out past 300 yards, I almost said meters, you almost got me as turning into a communist. But inside of 300 yards, neither you nor the animal you're shooting. If you actually go, as much as ballistic marketing hype would have you believe, this one is 50 feet per second faster, you must have it. This one goes from a 0.43 BC to above 0.5 ballistic coefficient, which everybody knows you need. You put all that crap in the garbage because it doesn't matter inside 300 meters. And most deer are taken inside right around 80 yards. Doesn't matter. Inside 250 yards, which is what you said, stop analysis by paralysis. Get a good load that shoots well, whether it's a 150 or a 168 or a 180. That's about, I would even stick less than 180 in a 308. If you're going to 180s, I'd go with a 30-06. But 150, 165, 168, right? If you want to try out the 130s, I like the 130s because I don't think you need anything more than that for deer or elk. I honestly don't. But just get a round that shoots well out of your gun, point of aim, point of impact. If you crunch the numbers, like a 130 versus a 180 inside of 250 yards, you're splitting hairs. It's a fun mental exercise, but again, neither you nor the animal you're taking, if you use a good bullet properly constructed, it doesn't matter. Like, you'd be better off with a 130 grain solid copper than a 168 grain full metal jacket, right? So the grain weights, pick one that shoots well out of your gun. If you decide you like one or the recoil impulse of one over another, one of the reasons I like the 130 and like a 308 if I'm hand loading is that, to me, it seems like less recoil, so I can shoot practice a lot more. Not that it has over punishing recoil anyway, but a deer doesn't need more than 130 grains if it's a good bullet construction. So why would I shoot more? The easy answer would be 158 grains are cheap and readily available, and you can get a lot of different options in them. So that's generally what I run, because I can go to Walmart and get a good 150 grain load that I can hunt deer and elk with. And if I'm not hand loading or don't have time to hand load, that's what I'm going to run. So, yeah, again, inside 250 yards, man, you just don't even, just get your rifle zeroed and get a load that's affordable, that has good terminal performance for the intended use. Zero the rifle and practice with it. Practice, and be able to put the round where you want it. That's way more important than if you have an extra inch of drop at 250 meters, because it's, again, inside 250 yards, it doesn't make any, you're just, don't overanalyze it, is my thought there. Also, why use 150 grain versus 164? I think he means 165. The ones I'm familiar with are generally 165 or 168s. Doesn't seem like that much weight to make a difference. Is it just based on what the rifle likes? Yeah, basically. And I told him, It can depend, right? If you're shooting out past 600 yards, absolutely you can start to see an appreciable gain in wind drift, which is the big one, and maybe, traversing that transonic barrier and ballistics coefficient, which I think is way overplayed. It's just a term that most people have no business bothering about or worrying about. But for this, if you're talking about, I want to shoot 308 in competition out past 600 meters, 600 yards, if you're a good person and moral and want to use yards instead of meters. I'm just kidding. That's not a shall. There's no you shall not use meters, right? It's not a commandment. I'm just joking. But out past 600, let's just say 600. Let's not even put a measurement on it. Martians, right? So out past that, you can see an appreciable gain in 165 to 175 grain bullets. Again, you start getting much heavier than that in 308. You don't have a velocity that is advantageous, but yeah, out past 600, you can see a difference in going from a 150 to a 175 or somewhere in the middle. But inside of 600, definitely inside of 300, just pick a bullet that your rifle likes. And you might find there's a good affordable 165 grain bonded bullet that your rifle really likes. Run it. You might find that there's a good 150 grain simple cup and core bullet that's very affordable at Walmart that your rifle really likes and shoots well, and it's affordable and available. Run that. One of my general go-tos for a lot of things for a lot of years has been 150 grain Federal Power Shock. It's crazy accurate out of my SCAR-17. It's very accurate out of my, Scout rifle. It's a good all-around load. It's available at Walmart. It's been around for years. I have a bunch of it. It's good. So there you go. That's an example. It also, I also have some 100, I think they're 65 or 68 grain tactical bonded ballistic or polymer tip bullets, right? I have a bunch of those because it's what I could get during the COVID thing to have some extra ammo. They both shoot well too. They also cost a lot more, so I generally just run the 150s. So, pick a bullet. Yeah, inside of 600, just pick a load that your rifle likes. If it makes you feel better to have a little bit of extra weight, go for the 160s, 160 whatever. But yeah, it's a good one. Oh, my favorite 308 rifles. Well, I talked about, okay, so let's see here. The SCAR-17, the SCAR Heavy, 308. I would submit one of the best battle rifles ever devised by man. One, because it's lightweight. It's 7.7 pounds. That's a fairly good weight for a hunting rifle, let alone a fighting rifle. To have a full-sized, rugged, durable battle rifle, 308 and 7.7 pounds, right? Look at that compared to an M14, which I also like, which I've also used, which I've also had, but that thing's heavy. I don't want to be carrying that thing around. We're talking about survival situation. I've often said, if you give me no caveats, like the peanut butter is hitting the balloon, whatever I said earlier, right? The balloon is hitting the fan. Whatever silly thing you want to use for the end of the world as we know it, and you give me no caveats. You wake me up in the middle of the night and say, it's going down. Grab a long gun. I'm grabbing a shotgun. Grabbing a 12-gauge shotgun. I've talked about that ad nausea, but they're not even my favorite to shoot. They're not my favorite to train with. They're not my favorite to compete with, but they're the most versatile, right? And when it comes to putting food on the table and or kicking down doors and many other things, the shotgun reigns supreme. That said, if you said it's a battle scenario, which I don't think is the most likely, but you're like, it's like whatever version of Red Dawn you want to talk about. You got North Koreans and, I don't know, who just pick some random country, Guatemalan paratroopers flying out of the sky, and it's a giant battlefield, and you can grab a rifle. Well, I'm going to grab the SCAR-17. It's in 308. I love that gun. Mine is crazy accurate. It's also crazy reliable and rugged. It's a piston system. It doesn't go to the bathroom where it eats like an AR-10. It's rugged. It's reliable. It's a fantastic rifle. It's light enough that if I had to carry it for months on end, I'd be good with it. It's cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel, so it's not going to rust inside the barrel. Even shooting that rifle a lot, it's probably going to outlast me. Even, God willing, I live to 120, that rifle could be passed down for generations. I'm not shooting it on full auto, right? I'm not wearing stuff out a lot. It's a great rifle. So that's one of my favorite 308 rifles. My other one would be my scout rifle, my Ruger gun sight scout rifle, not the new #MeToo plastic push feed scout rifle that's like so many other plastic push feeds. I see those like I see polymer striker fired handguns, like bleh, another one. But the gun sight scout rifle, stainless steel controlled round feed, based on the most rugged, reliable, repeating bolt action rifle design, or any repeating, rifle design, the most rugged of all time, the Mauser 98, which would include the Mauser 98s, which would include the Springfield 1903, because we copied the Mauser 98, which would include the pre-64 Winchester Model 70, which I love, which I would still say is the best hunting rifle ever made, but mine's in 30-06, so that one's off the table. For mine, the Ruger gun sight, not the Ruger American, the Ruger gun sight scout rifle. It's stainless steel. It's controlled round feed. Mine is decently accurate. It's not a tack driver, but it's good. It's a scout rifle. Scout rifle, if you read Jeff Cooper's To Ride, Shoot Straight, and Speak the Truth, or his other stuff where he talks about scout rifles, it's for 300 yards and in. 300 yards and in, that rifle's crazy accurate. It's also light. I forget what it weighs, but it's lightweight. That's one of the things of a scout rifle. It's very versatile. A scout rifle, I think a lot of people get confused. A scout rifle is not for battle. It's not a battlefield rifle. You could use it. It's not great for it. It's not a hunting rifle. It's an okay hunting rifle. I've taken many a thing with rifles that weren't the best for the purpose, right? But it's not. If you want the best hunting rifle, the scout rifle's not it. Get a dedicated hunting rifle. But the scout is kind of a mule. It's a crossover. It's a good general purpose thing. It's a decent hunting rifle. It's a lot better than a lot of other, like it's better, if you had to fight with it, it's a better fighting rifle than a hunting bolt action rifle. It's got a detachable box magazine. It's, light and handy. Controlled round, mine's a controlled round feed, which I would consider better. But I love the Ruger gun sight scout rifle. And it's a fantastic rifle. It's light, it's handy, it's rugged. If you told me that it was a rifle I had to grab, and I was heading into the bush, like I live in a rugged, wild area that is, I can be my backyard, and I live here on purpose, abuts like 2 million acres of wild wilderness land, which abuts several other million acres, adjoined to several other million acres. I could go and disappear in there, God willing, for the rest of my life. If you said that was the scenario when I had to grab a rifle, it'd probably be the scout rifle. It'd either be, we're talking about 308, I'd have to debate between the scout rifle or my Ruger guide gun, which is almost identical except for it's in 30-06. But we're talking about 308. So again, the Ruger gun sight scout rifle. So those would be my two favorite rifles that I own in 308. There's a lot of other rifles that I have that aren't chambered in 308, but they could be, that I would really like. But let's keep it to what I have. Keep this episode at a manageable level. Let's pause here and move on. Some other things I wanted to touch on. Is the 308 right for you? That's a good question. It's 2026. I think I did an episode, I don't know if it's been months ago, years ago. I've been doing this show, 7 years now? At least been podcasting for that long. This is actually the third podcast that I've done. The flagship is Simple Man Sermons, if you care about the important stuff. And then I do one Alpha Male podcast. If you're like, why don't you do stuff on medical, or why don't you do stuff on this? Have you checked out Alpha Male Podcast? Because a lot of the stuff that's not gun stuff is on Alpha Male. You're like, why don't you talk about working out and fitness? And I do. Go check out Alpha Male Podcast. So where was I? I've been doing this a long time. So at one point I did an episode, is 6.5 Creedmoor the new 308? Yeah, I think for most people, right, ballistically, the 6.5 Creedmoor is a better option. And I know, you think it's going to give you a man bun and have you produce estrogen. It's not. Just don't drink a soy latte while you're shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor. You're in dangerous territory. Maybe don't wear a pink polo shirt and you'll be fine. But 6.5 Creedmoor is a good round. It's arguably more efficient and better for most people than a 308. Now, again, 308 superpower is not that it's great ballistically. It's okay ballistically, and it's very widely available. The 6.5 Creedmoor is getting there. And, again, I think 130 grain bullet for deer and elk and anything under that is plenty. And although a lot of the people that dote on the 6.5 Creedmoor think, oh, it's super great long range. I don't care about that. Long range is golfing with a gun. It's super unpractical. Even if we're talking about CONUS, Continental United States stuff, even most, and I've never been a sniper, don't pretend to be, I have been a designated marksman in real life. Most shots for, in operating inside the United States, sharpshooters, designated marksman, however you want to quantify that, it's like an average of 70-something yards. You need a very precise shot, but this long-range stuff, look at all the sniper stuff that's happened recently in the U.S. Against the president, protecting the president, all that stuff, attempts, failed attempts, you're not talking 1,000 yards. That's not real-life stuff. Where was I going with that? I'm way off on a tangent. It just ticks me off when people start just drooling over BC numbers. But if you take away the stupid high BC bullets in the 6.5 Creedmoor, which you probably don't need, that 120 to 130 grain bullet is fantastic. You're going to get more efficiency. You're going to get less recoil. You're going to get very good terminal performance if you choose the right bullet. Not if you choose some super high BC target bullet because it's got a super high BC, and then get surprised when you shoot an animal with a target bullet and wonder why it doesn't perform like a hunting bullet, why it performs like a full metal jacket. That's on you. That's not the cartridge's fault. 6.5 Creedmoor arguably is a better option for many people, for most things. If you're into practical survival, which I talk a lot about, the 308 is still probably a better option. Why? Because if you're going to stockpile one full-powered rifle cartridge, 308 still reigns supreme. You can get some fighting rifles in 6.5 Creedmoor, right? They make a SCAR in 6.5 Creedmoor, but they make a lot more in 308. 308 is still more available, I think, although 6.5 Creedmoor is getting there. They make a lot of really good hunting rifles in 308. If you're more of a classic hunter, right, 6.5 Creedmoor came out in 2007, so you're not getting any hunting rifle unless it was rechambered, which kind of defeats the classic purpose, right? But you're not getting old school classic hunting rifles in 6.5 Creedmoor because it did not exist, right? Before that, it was the 260 Remington, and before that, it was 6.5 by 55 Swede, which are both great cartridges. But today, the practical one is the 6.5 Creedmoor. But it's not very old, 2007, right? So if you're into the classic stuff, the 308 is still lit. I still think if you're a one cartridge tactical and hunting kind of guy, the 308 is still better. But for many things, the 6.5 Creedmoor. So should you have one? I don't know. Are you into practical survival stuff? Are you into what's ultimately best ballistically? I've said if you're looking for the most versatile hunting cartridge, it's the 30-06 because the 30-06 handles heavier bullets better, and you might want heavier bullets. And if you're talking about hunting in a bolt action, I know there's a short action versus long action thing, but I really don't think it makes much of a difference. If you're talking about ultralight mountain rifles, which I have, then it is a thing. But general purpose hunting rifle, I don't think you're going to notice a difference. 30-06 I think is more versatile. And if you say, why not the 300 Win Mag? No, because 300 Win Mag is just, I think a lot of people that like that cartridge want to prove something to themselves. And I get it, right? I've been through that phase. I've been through that stage. I've been through the magnemitis. I've been cured. I've shot, it's not like I don't need to prove it to myself or anybody else. I've shot weapons that would make 300 Win Mag pee its pants, right? I've shot crew serve weapons. I've shot things I can't even talk about, right? So I don't need to prove that to myself or anybody else that I can handle a 300 Win Mag. But I like a light, manageable rifle for the things that I like to do most of the time. If you just want to go carry your rifle from your car to a bench and shoot it off a bench, or you want to carry it 40 yards to a tree stand, yeah, you can shoot a 10-pound rifle, a giant obese abomination with a giant scope. And in that kind of rifle, a 300 Win Mag is fine. You can shoot it a ton. But like yesterday, I was out working up loads for my 280 Ackley Improved that I'm blessed to have. And I shot, I don't know, a Tupperware tub full of empty brass, at least, working up loads. And I enjoyed it in a 6-pound rifle. I don't want to do that in a 300 Win Mag. It's not fun for me. I could do it, gritting my teeth, but I don't want to. I want to enjoy it. So I don't, and I think the military got it right quite a while ago when they said, the 30-06 is about the right amount of recoil that the average man can train with all day and not, have a detriment in accuracy. And I think a 300 Win Mag, if you're going to go to that, you have to go with a fat, obese rifle. And I don't like fat, obese rifles. I like light, handy trim rifles. I like to test myself in marksmanship, standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. I'll shoot off a bench if I'm trying to work up a load or zero a rifle. That's fine, but that's not a test of me as much as it is a test of the equipment, right? So that's just me. So I think the 30-06 is a better, more versatile all-around hunting cartridge in a rifle that is the kind of hunting that I like to do. There's all kinds of hunting, and I'm not going to put you down. If you walk 20 yards and sit in front of a corn feeder, hey, man, I'm glad you're out there not watching Netflix and eating Doritos. I'm glad you're out there in the field hunting. If you hunt out of a tree stand and you have to walk 40 yards and climb and hoist a gun up and sit for the rest of the day, really doesn't matter if your rifle's 9 pounds. If you're hiking up and down the Rocky Mountains in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, tracking, stalking, going through snow, that's the kind of hunting that I like to do, and I don't want to lug around the 9-pound rifle. I could, but why? When I don't need it. The 30-06 will kill anything in North America. So I think the 30-06 is a more versatile hunting cartridge, which is why I picked it. Most of you guys live east of the Mississippi. You can get a 30-06 or a 270 if you live east of the Mississippi, but you don't need it, right? You don't need it. You can get a hot rod hunting cartridge if you want. You could go 6.5 PRC or, when I was younger, I would nerd out. One of my early jobs, I was a lifeguard. When it was slow or raining or whatever, I'd sit under an umbrella and I would read ballistics charts because I was a ballistics nerd even back then. My first, talking about the Magnum Midas, I got it in my mind that saving all that money as a lifeguard before I joined the Marine Corps, the rifle that I needed was a 7mm Rem Mag. Well, I grew up as a poor boy in the South in rural Virginia. I had taken all my deer, I think, with a shotgun, probably inside of 70 yards. I hunted swamps and thickets and, pine barrens. Or cypress swamps in a canoe. Why I thought I needed a 7mm Rem Mag for hunting whitetail in Virginia, I was young and naive, right? And I thought that those 3 extra less inches of drop at 300 yards were what I needed, even though I had never even legally shot a deer that far away. Because I was a poor boy in the South and I didn't have access to that kind of land. I hunted public land, which is mostly swamps and nasty areas. So, again, if you want a more powerful rifle, more power to you. But I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that most people voted for 308 because most people live east of the Mississippi. And if you just want an affordable, full-powered hunting rifle east of the Mississippi, or even west of the Mississippi, I took my elk last year with a 308, and I have other rifles. It was a good, handy rifle for the area that I was hunting. That rifle, by the way, I should have included that in my favorite rifles. Well, it's not too late. The episode's still going. I really like the Sig Cross, the Trax, the lightweight version. It's kind of funky, but I do a lot of training, as you might imagine, with who I am and what I do, with an AR-15, right? And it's a bolt-action rifle, but it's very similar to an AR-15 in ergonomics. I like that rifle. It is a push feed, so I don't know if I would include it in my favorites, but it's a good rifle. I took my elk with that last year with a 308 150-grain bullet. So I guess I should not be surprised that the 308 reigned supreme, even though it was a hunting-related question. 308, it's a great, great cartridge, even if we stick with the vanilla loading for the vanilla caliber. 150 grain at 2800. Again, most deer are taking 80 yards and in. That's more than what you need. Now, there's really no issue because it's the most common, so you're probably not going to get anything cheaper unless something's just on sale, unless you go down on an intermediate cartridge, which I don't recommend. The 308, 150 grain at 2800 with a proper bullet, not a full metal jacket, right, but with a proper bullet. It's a good deer hunting caliber. Good cartridge. So, should you get a 308? Do you own a 308? Right? if you were just like, I want to get into hunting this year. Like I've listened to you, I listened to your Why We Hunt podcast. I want to put meat on the table for me and my family, whether or not there's food at the store this year. I just want to be able to go out and take meat and put it on the table for my family. I want to get into hunting. Man, I'm probably going to recommend you get a 308. I'm probably going to recommend you get a bolt action, Savage or Ruger American, right? 308. If you just like, I just want a 270 because I love Jack O'Connor, cool. But if you're asking me, like, I'm getting into hunting this year and I want to get started into deer hunting with a rifle, because I'll probably tell you if you're getting started in hunting, you start out with a shotgun. But anyway, if you're like, I want to get a rifle for hunting deer, what should I get? My number one recommendation is going to be get a 308. And again, Ruger American or Savage Axis, or if you want to spend more money to begin with, go ahead. But for hunting, those are fine. 308 is probably what I'm going to recommend. So I don't know why I am surprised that the 30-06 didn't win or 270 didn't win, or that the 308 got a vast majority of the vote, because that's what I would recommend for a beginning hunter. Once you start getting more discernment into what different calibers can offer, you might go with something else for different hunts. But for example, when I lived in Alaska, I tended towards a 30-06 because I wanted the heavier weight bullets, and I think 30-06 offers a little bit more when you get to the heavier, like 180 grains or 220 grain round noses. I think 30-06 does better for that. But for most people, 308, it's a fantastic option. So again, if you're thinking about getting into deer hunting this year, and now is a good time to think about that, because now is the time when people, since January 1st, whatever, a lot of people start selling off their hunting rifles and stuff they're not using. A lot of those are in 308. It's a good time to start looking at hunting rifles. Doesn't have to be that. There's a lot of good calibers that will do just as good as a 308, but I'd argue there's no better option for a first-time hunter getting into hunting. And even if you get something else later that you like better, I can't imagine that you would regret having a 308 bolt gun. So, it's fantastic guns, fantastic caliber, good all around, still the king of calibers. With that, thanks for listening. The tactical tip of the day, again, if you're going out and hunting, 40 yards to a deer stand and you get hurt or something, you're just going to go home or go to the hospital, fine. But if you're doing deep wilderness like backcountry hunting, which I love, one tip is if you have a polymer stock, and a lot of stocks are polymer nowadays, get a way to easily remove that recoil pad if you can, like take it off and put a limb saver pad, not because you need it for the recoil, but because they're easy to take on and off, and throw a bore snake in your buttstock. Put something in there so it doesn't rattle around, right? Something simple, styrofoam or something so it doesn't rattle around. But you can put other stuff in there like a survival kit, but put in a bore snake, because you drop your rifle in the dirt and get it all in the muzzle. That's not good, right? Or if you've just been out hunting all day and it's been raining all day or snowing all day, running that bore snake through at the end of the day. You could even pre-soak the front of it with a little bit of CLP. Make sure you know where your cold bore shots go, but that's a great thing to have that can really ruin a hunt if you don't have it in a deep. You're not somewhere where you're just like, oh, I'm just going to go home at the end of the day. If you can't get home or go home, having that bore snake in the buttstock is really nice. You could say, I'll just put it in my pack, but you might forget. It's hard to forget if you have an extra one in your buttstock. So that's your tactical tip of the day. Your tactical verse of the day. One that is good for hunting thought and tactical thought. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He sets me on high places. He teaches my hands to make war so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. Thanks for listening and have a blessed day.